Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today as we continue our celebration of the Resident Evil 30th anniversary, I thought we'd do something a little different. With a franchise that's gone on for 30 years, has dozens of games at this point, there are many highs and there are many lows. And I thought it's the perfect time as we go into the celebration of just obviously the 30 years of a franchise that mostly has highs, as far as I'm concerned, mostly has highs. We should talk about the disappointments, because there are a few things. Even in some of the best things that have happened, we've had some disappointments. So today, I would like to discuss the biggest disappointments in the Resident Evil franchise. And I'm gonna throw out a little bit of a curveball here, because the first thing I wanna do is talk about every live action Resident Evil movie, except for the first one. I really like the first one. I still think the first one's really good. I know some people like the second one, but I can't stand it. Like, honestly, it was like, I can't stand it. But even within that, there's some ups and downs. I feel like I like every odd numbered live action movie, because I like the first one. I didn't like the second one, which admittedly was a huge thing because of Mike Epps. So I was like, Mike, you can't have funny Mike Epps making the jokes that he's making and then expect me to be like, yeah, Resident Evil. I was like, you can't, like, I don't, that one thing, like, just really did it. And also I did see that with like the cheapest bootleg on planet Earth. Like, if you go back to like the first YouTube video, it was like that kind of quality, if not worse. But it was horrible quality, but it was the movie itself that was just like, like, oh, that's cool. Like, it had the most references, which is the unfortunate thing. I'd say 2 and maybe 5, whichever one ended up having Leon in it. Yeah, I think it was 5, because it was right before 6. So I think 2 and 5 had like the most actual references to the franchise, because it was either character based or just things that they actually did. So I was like, okay, I can appreciate it for that. And it took me like over a decade to realize that, because I don't remember the character's name, but Mike Epps' character, he had 2 gold guns. And I always thought that was the dumbest thing in the world. It's still stupid, because realistically speaking, it's just him having gold guns, and it was more the comedic thing. But it took me forever to realize that's a reference to the 2 gold Lugers from Code Veronica. And I was like, oh, I never put 2 and 2 together, unless I'm wrong, in which case that's a crazy coincidence. And I mostly put it together because the end of that second movie is literally just the Code Veronica intro that Claire has running from the helicopter and everything. And then you have, a hand-to-hand combat fight with Nemesis, which, is what it is. But it took me forever to put that together, like, oh, those were supposed to be a reference. Never thought of that. I just thought it was like a dumb thing, because admittedly the character was so silly. I mean, he makes a GTA reference. Also, it still bugs me. This is a super nerd thing. I still hate the fact that he said 10 points, and I was like, you don't get points for hitting people in GTA. I remember thinking that the first time I saw that, I was like, I don't know how old I was when that second movie came out, but I know I was super young, and I'm like, you do not get points for hitting people in Grand Theft Auto. Why did they do that? And that just like really bugged me for some reason. But I don't like the live action films. Like I said, I like the first one. The second one really bugged me because of the Mike Epps stuff. Although I remember being so excited. I remember the first time I saw that trailer. I don't know what movie I saw, but as soon as the trailer started, I was like, this is Resident Evil. And it was before anything showed up. I was just like, it's Resident Evil. And I was right. And it was Resident Evil 2. So I was super hyped for it. And for whatever reason, I didn't actually end up being able to see it in theaters, which is why I ended up seeing the bootleg. But I was like, yeah, I don't really like this. And I can understand why people do, because like I said, it has so many references to it. Like, honestly, it's Resident Evil 3 with some like elements from Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica, because they have the liquor and actually no, the liquor's in the very first one. So I forgot I guess it's just 3 at that point. Great casting for Jill, and then they were like, we don't need her again until like 4 movies later, and then we won't really do anything. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, they got people that actually did like some good stuff. I did like the element of the mercenaries, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he was the dude that's in The Mummy. I like that guy. He's super cool. So I was like, I can't hate on that. I love The Mummy. Love the Mummy movie. So I was like, yeah, he's in it. I'm happy to see him. Just happy to see him. But I was always disappointed with that movie. And then when 3 came out, it was like, okay, it's already gotten crazy enough and just done things that I don't like enough that you get to that point of just pure acceptance, much like, the Resident Evil games. I mean, RE6 has a dinosaur man. And by the time I hit that point, I was like, I accept. I actually had fun with it. I was like, you know what? Sure, buddy. Like, I'm just having fun at this point. So you hit me with it, and then I just alter my mindset, and I'm no longer disappointed. I just say, this is the ride you want to take me on. It's not like I have the money to change it, so I'm gonna just see how it goes and have fun with it. So that's how it went, and I was like, all right, I'll watch 3, and I enjoyed it a decent amount. And then 4 was super crazy because they would like randomly get rid of characters and stuff. We have like these battles show up, and then Chris shows up. Shout out to I almost said Sam Witwer, but that is not the actor's name. His first name is Sam. or maybe I'm just thinking of his character's name from Prison Break. But either way, I love that dude. He's great. Also played Captain Cold in the DC shows. But I was like, this is cool. You know, like it's all right. And then, you know, the 5th movie came out, and I was like, okay, I actually liked the 5th movie because it was like, all right, some things are happening, and at the very least, the ending I was super excited for. I was like, all right, you've effed up a lot, royally. And this friend, like, they switch stuff around all over the place. They bring characters in that are like perfect cast, and then they drop them out. Ali Lauder as Claire was actually pretty cool. I always remember in that 3rd movie, this is super random, but I remember they had that random girl, and they were like, yeah, we found her at a Kmart, so we call her Kmart. And I remember watching that movie and being like, you don't do shit for the games. You could have just called her Rebecca. Like, you could have just thrown it in. Just throw me a bone. Like, you might as well have done it for no reason. And I just always thought of it. I was like, there's no point. There's just no point. Like, we call her Kmart. I'm like, you just call her Rebecca. Like, give me something. For no, like, just because, you might as well. Like, it was super weird. I'm like, you just have this random young girl character. And they're like, yeah, we found her at a Kmart, so that's what we call her. And I'm like, I know you don't care about the games. I really understand it. I'm on the ride already. But seriously, nobody thought, oh, what if we just throw a bomb? What if we just fart a name out there? Like, Rebecca's right there. Random young character that's like slightly important. Just plop it there. That's all you had to do. Super weird, I know, but you know, it is what it is. Like, that whole franchise is weird. Like, the 3rd movie with like the world ended and all the water dried up and stuff, and I'm like, that doesn't, okay. You know, when I first saw it, I didn't think much of it. I was just like, okay, I guess that's where it's headed. But then the very next movie, they reversed it, and I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that wasn't really as serious as they made it seem. Or it's like all the water dried up. Even, not that it made much sense, but it was like, okay, you know, you're just saying it's a desert. Now it's a desert movie, so they wanted to do Mad Max, I guess. I was like, all right, sure. And then the 4th movie was weird, and they, you know, did like all the extra clone stuff and everything. And then 5 was super crazy, but I somewhat enjoyed it. You know, they were bringing characters back and everything. And I was like, all right, I can somewhat accept this. And then 5 ends. And I'm like, I'm actually kind of hyped for this last movie. You got Wesker teaming up with all the heroes. You got 3 effing real video game characters because they brought Jill back. They had Leon and they had Ada. And obviously Wesker was always there. So, you know, obviously video game character, but it's hard to realize like, oh, that was something special to actually at least have him there all the time. But you have 4 video game characters and then like, you know, the original character for the movie franchise. And I was like, okay, last stand for humanity. I'll take it. You know, I'll take it. You got a bunch of, you know, game characters together. They can do some cool stuff. You can play around. I'll do it. I'm happy. 6th movie effing starts. Yeah, they're dead. They all died. They all blew something. We got attacked. Wesker betrayed us and everybody's dead now. And then Alice just pops out of an effing grate. And I was so pissed. I just remember that happening and being like, this effing movie. And then, of course, it was just a horrible movie. Like, the edits for the action was ridiculous. That I will never forget the end of that movie where they kill all the zombies and stuff because they pour gasoline down because they're in a tower, and they pour all the gasoline down, and then they light the gasoline on fire, and the fire pours down with the gasoline, and I'm like, that is literally against physics. Fire goes up. They would have blown up. If you pour gasoline out, and then you light a fire, it will go back to the source and it'll blow you to bits. Like, you would be effing dead. Honestly, you can't even, you know, I mean, obviously movies and TV are fake, but every TV show where they use gas and they just light it and then they like throw a match on something, you would explode. Like, you cannot do that. You can't just light a match after you poured gasoline on something. It's not safe. Do not do that, please. But that was insane. The gasoline and the fire poured down. Insane. And then they killed Wesker with a door. A door fell on his ankle. He's like, oh, I'm dead. It's like, jeez, oh my God. Ridiculous. That's the worst one. Like, the last movie is the worst movie, and that's a real effing shame. And they were all like, you know, not that great anyway, but my God. And then Welcome to Raccoon City. It was supposed to do some good stuff, and it has beautiful references. It has ridiculous references, in fact, which is what makes me hate that movie even more. I'm not sure. I'd have to see them back to back, which I would never intentionally do on purpose. I'm never going to watch the 6th movie and then Welcome to Raccoon City together. I wouldn't do that to myself. But I would have to do it to really compare how much I hate them. I'd probably say 6 is still the worst one. You just go story-wise and editing and all that stuff and the physics. It's the worst one. But Welcome to Raccoon City was so disappointing that it hurt. Because I'm like, they have references to all sorts of stuff in the games. I will never forget, and you can watch my review on this, and I talk about all the references I noticed. But at the beginning of the movie, they have like Go Tell Aunt Rhodey. They throw that in there from RE7. At the time, for anyone who doesn't remember, that was the latest game. And then at the very end of the movie, and spoilers for this because you don't need to watch it, but you already know that, when they had Wesker, which we don't even have to get into, like the characters not really acting the way that they should have acted, all that crap. When he wakes up in the body bag, that's a reference to like the intro loading screen to the RE1 remake, where they just have like the random zombie in a body bag lean up, and then just like a non-corporeal gunshot pops out of nowhere and just kills the zombie. I was like, that's what that's a reference to. That is like one of the craziest things I would ever expect to see. Like nobody would have called that as a reference that you throw in there. That was a beautiful reference in a really crappy movie that they just did a bad job with. And it really sucks. It really sucks. Real shame about that. But shout out to Robbie Amell, playing Chris Redfield. Like him when he was, I guess he was the Atom in the CW stuff. So, you know, a lot of characters I randomly remember, like, oh, I watched all the CW comic book shows. So like, hey, shout out to Robbie Amell. But that was an interesting time with that movie. Interesting time. Shame, real shame. And we'll see what happens. You know, we got a new one coming up, Zach Kreger. I hope he does well. I love him because he's in an old sketch comedy show called The Whitest Kids You Know. If you've never seen it, that show is hilarious. So I'm like, man, I don't want to have to hate you, dude, because I really like what you've done. I even like, you know, I like Miss March. Nobody's going to know what that is. I love that movie. Had me rolling. But I like Miss March. Weapons was really good. And I'm just like, okay, we'll see what happens. If it's at least good, I'll take it. You know, like it's not gonna, like it's his own story. It's already not gonna be what we always ask for. Like just, even if we know what's gonna happen, you can still do it right. Like it doesn't, at this point, just do the actual original games. Who cares if we know what it is? Just do it right and we're good to go. So we'll see what happens. I hope it all, you know, turns out well, but had to start with the live action stuff before dipping into the game, because the live action stuff, I'm the Netflix show. That's all I'm gonna do about that one. But we'll move on to the video games. So of course, going with disappointments within the video games of the Resident Evil franchise, I do want to touch on Resident Evil 6. I've mentioned this a couple times because, you know, some stories will repeat as I'm just talking all things Resident Evil at this point. I don't hate Resident Evil 6 as much as other people do. It's got its issues, don't get me wrong, but I don't hate it as much as other people do. I definitely think it sucks in terms of, it's not a horror game. Like nothing in that game I think is scary in any regard. Even the like cheap crap that they do with Leon in the very beginning where they force you to walk slow, I hate that. You know, that's disappointing in itself, and that's about as close as you get to scary as that. And other than that, it's like, okay, chaotic, because I will say, you know, and I've mentioned this before, the outbreak when you're actually in like that city level, one of my favorite things in all of Resident Evil that I've genuinely ever experienced. That's like one of the best levels we've ever had in Resident Evil. But that's not scary. It was just like, holy crap, this is like, you're seeing an outbreak really in person. It's not like the opening cutscene in Resident Evil 3, and then you show up after Jill, like, you know, tucks and rolls out of an explosion. It's like, no, you're seeing it in action. You're seeing cars crash and people just running for their lives. That's fun to see. It's like, it's not scary, but it's like, this is intense. I like seeing this in, you know, Resident Evil. So I really love that, but nothing about that game was scary. And I remember, because I started with Jake and Sherry, and I remember you go into like this one random building and it has like a bunch of painted eyeballs and stuff, and then you go down the ladder and then you just leave out. And I was like, what the F was that? Like, I thought it was about to go right into something scary, and it was like this pitch black room, and then you just go down the ladder and you leave out, and it was just like a 2-story building with just as a ladder. And I was like, what the, like, I thought you were about to do something. And it's like, no, you just, it looked kind of creepy. And then you just walk right back outside. Like, I'll never forget that disappointment where I legit was like, here we go. And then I just went right back outside. I was like, why'd they even make this building? I just went down the ladder. There was legit, like, I feel like they wasted developer time even making that building just for it to be a ladder. So you go down. Makes no sense, but that's what they did, and I was like, okay. But I want to talk about Resident Evil 5. I like Resident Evil 6 more than Resident Evil 5. I've said that a couple of times, you know, within these last few episodes. But RE5, in the same vein as 6, where it's like nothing about this game is scary, I still feel like because I don't like the story as much, I like 5 even less than I like 6. Because I just didn't enjoy the story, and it was way too actiony. Like, it was the whole day, or the whole game takes place during the day, except for the El Gigante fight and then the Wesker fight. But it was like, none of this is scary. It's just super crazy stuff going on. It's way too actiony. Even for 6 being like the action game, they did at least do something to say like, hey, it's not going to be 100% like 5. Like, obviously Chris and Piers' campaign is more like 5, and then Leon and Helena's campaign is like kind of a action-y thing. Like, in all honesty, when 9 comes out, I want to see what people are talking about, because people are going to go back to 6 and be like, huh, okay. Like, you might not like the story still, don't get me wrong. Gameplay-wise, though, I think it was like a bit too much action, but it was still less than 5, or still less than, well, admittedly, yeah, less than 5 in just Chris and Pierce's campaign. But I was like, in between there is something good, and I think that's what we're gonna get with 9. Like, they're gonna realize you can do the action, because the RE4 remake, phenomenal. I like it more than the original. I've said that a couple of times lately as well, but it's because they added horror, and even the action is better because you can do the parries and everything, and like, it's just super cool. So even when you add a slight, addition to the action, when you put enough extra horror in there, it's like, I'm fine. So I think 9 is going to be the perfect blend, where it's just like the remake of 4. Like, hey, you want to do this, you can do all these cool action maneuvers and everything you want, but it's still pretty scary. Or at the very least, it's intense, much like the RE6 thing, where it's like, hey, you're in the city and it's really crazy, but you're the one you're actually fighting. Like, being in the village is pretty intense in 4. Even if I can fight everybody off, they're way more aggressive than the OG 4. So it's definitely more entertaining, because it's like, oh, this is pretty intense. Like, and also they don't go down as quick either. You can't shoot somebody in the face and guarantee you get a nice little kickflip out of that. It's like, no, sometimes you will, but other times they'll just tank it and then punch you straight in the face, which happens all the effing time. Like, you think you're about to get a nice contextual hit, like, oh, I'm about to get you, and like, no, you didn't. And then they just right in the face. So it can be intense, and based on the little bit that I've heard for 9, that is how Leon's part is going to play out a little bit. So I'm super excited for that. But RE5 was not doing the trick for me. Nothing was scary. I didn't like the story. Of course, I was a little upset, even thinking Jill was gone, because that's crazy. But of course, everything was fine. Still disappointed in the fact that they just randomly made her blind. Obviously, that's been changed because of Death Island, so officially she went back to her regular hair color. Who knows what else F happened, because they just don't want to do anything with Jill, and it's like, yeah, we want to just, like, she's fine. She went through this infection and that infection, so she's still super young. And I said this a couple episodes ago too. They just wanted to reuse the model for Death Island. I love Death Island. Like, I was having a blast with that. Admittedly, I was also high. I had a great time with that movie. But like, I was super happy to see everybody together. But I was like, yeah, they just wanted to reuse the model. Like, all they did was like change her, like give her a necklace and like give her a different undershirt, and that was it. And I'm like, they just wanted to reuse the model, basically. Like, it was really cheap that they did it that way and just did like like, they couldn't have given her literally a different shirt. It was a bit of a disappointment. So despite finally getting to see Jill Valentine after RE5, like, in timeline one, obviously we got Revelations, but timeline wise, seeing her after 5 was great. That movie had nothing to do with anything that happened. And I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. Same thing with Claire and Leon. Like, we had that one movie where Leon was like, oh, I can't give you this information. Sorry, Claire. And it was like, that's kind of a dick move. And then Death Island is like, a decade later, but it's like somewhere in there they had to make up. Like, I do want to know how they got over that hump. Like, what did they do to be like, hey, we're cool again? Because that was a dick move that he did. And then it was just like, Death Island's like super, way after 6 and everything. Like, that's great. I love seeing everybody come back. But you can't keep dropping stories in between. And same things that I hope that we get from 9, which I'm sure we won't. One of the biggest disappointments, and this is actually like an important thing. This isn't just like, visually this or random characters is actually important because that ties into the story. But story-wise, them just constantly dropping random stuff into the game, and 7 and 8 are like ridiculous. Like, that's where it really is right now, because it's like 7 had the connections, which I recently watched a video. The connections was so effing like minuscule that I forget that that's even a thing. Every time somebody references like, yeah, Mia worked for the connections, I'm like, I literally forget that existed every single time somebody says it. Like, oh yeah, she was a part of a different organization that has literally only existed for one effing game. And then 8 comes out and it's like, oh yeah, BSAA is bad now. What are you talking, what? And then I'm sure 9's not gonna do anything about this. And I hope I'm wrong. But as of now, because I know, this is where we currently are, that is definitely what I would say is like the biggest disappointment, are those drop storylines. There's all sorts of little mechanical stuff or things I wish they did. And I'll talk about some of the other, less egregious things that they've done. But straight up story beats just being introduced and then no details on them, like what are the connections? What, like the Blue Umbrella thing feels like it came and went instantaneously, and now we're back to the BSAA, but they're not the bad guys. So I'm just like, I don't know. Like, there's so many things that I have questions about, and I'm just like, they just keep dropping new stuff, and I'll say it till it happens. But Revelations 3, I know I talked about all this in some other video. But Revelations 3, what the hell? Like, we need something. If it's not Revelations 3, throw it in the main storyline, please, because I need to know where Natalia is and what's going on with that. You got like a buttload of characters. Obviously, once again, probably the second, biggest disappointment when it comes to the actual games is characters not showing up. That means that we don't get certain stories. If Jake shows up, something is going to be important. If Sherry shows up, which people are saying she might, things are important. You got what, 4 characters in the franchise right now that are tied to other characters that have existed. One character is she's not young anymore because that was a decade ago, but Natalia is a little girl clone of Alex Wesker. Jake is the son of Albert Wesker. Sherry's the daughter of Birkin, so both of them have like genetics in them. And then now we have Grace as like the new 4th character that's literally either, with one of them being a clone in Natalia, the other 3 are just straight up descendants with like super special blood, which is literally the plot line of not only 6, but also 9 now, because, Jake's story was Sherry had to go to him because he had the specific cure for like, I don't remember what they were doing. I know Leon was dealing with the C virus. I think everyone, it was all tied in. So I think he had like, his blood was the cure for the C virus because he was immune to that, which I assume Sherry was somewhat immune to that. It's been a minute, so I'd have to go back for like the actual details as to her immunity. But you got like a dude with enhanced strength because he's got Wesker's blood in him. Sherry has like super duper healing. She had a pane of glass shoot through her spine and she was like, yeah, just pull that back out real quick. So you got characters that are super important that just don't effing show up, and it's like, along with them dropping connections or the Neo umbrella, or a blue umbrella, I should say, BSAA being evil now. Like, you have giant plot points as well as characters just not showing up again. And it's like, I understand. Billy's not he probably won't come back. I want to see Billy come back. I think he should. I think, I want to see him come back. I want to see Sheva come back. But neither of them are the descendants of other characters that have existed or clones of a character that like straight up got introduced as one of the other Wesker children. That's a huge deal. Story points, companies, characters. And they're just kind of like, yeah, we'll just show you, and then we'll see you when we see you. They want to make new characters, but obviously Jill is the most egregious example. It's like they want to make new characters, but they don't just want to bring somebody classic back so that we can have an advancement in their storyline. So I would say that is those are like number 1 and number 2. Like, just dropping full-on new companies and turning other companies evil, that's number 1, because that affects a bunch of characters. And then just not putting the characters back in the games is number 2, because it's like, I want to see what happens. I know RE6 is panned, but that does not mean you ignore all those characters. Only 2 of them were new. Well, 3 of them were new, 1 of them's dead, so we can't get Pierce coming back anyway. But you only had 2 characters. I don't expect Helena to come back. That's fine. No offense to her, but it's fine. But Jake has to come back. So it's just super weird. And obviously Sherry should come back. Leon and Chris are gonna come. Chris already has come back, and Leon has, as far as just remakes, but this is his first one coming back timeline-wise since 6. But it's just super weird. But that's number 1 and number 2 as far as like legit disappointments within the franchise. So we'd love to know your thoughts on that, because I recently watched a video today where someone actually talked about that, and I was like, man, we all been saying the same thing for like the last 10 years. Like, are y'all gonna like explain this stuff at some point? Because once again, I want to be hopeful, but all the games are so effing separated that it's just like, they'll drop something in one game and then it's like, that wasn't that game though. It's like, but that was a new thing that you put in the game in the last like 2 hours, like the thing in 8 was literally within like the last 2 hours of the game. It's like, that is literally a brand new plot point for the entire franchise, and you put it in basically, it was almost an epilogue at that point. You put in the last 2 hours of the game. The connections, of course, was thrown in like the middle of 7, but still, that's one tiny plot point, and then you never explain it, and it's just like, these random people who make like the clone of this kid and the mold and all this stuff is like, details, please? Details. I know it's been 30 years overall, but it's still been a couple years since then. Like, can we get something? And it has been over a decade since Revelations 2. So, like that one actually has hit the 10-year mark, and it's like, you owe us that at this point. But to go back to some of the lesser things, because I feel like I'm at like a 10, I'm gonna bring it down to like a 7. And this is something I've referenced a couple of times as well. And this is mostly for the remake, or the remakes in general. And I know I've said this probably like 3 or 4. For those of you that actually watched a bunch of my stuff, sorry you're hearing this for like the 5th time, but I know that's nobody that's watching, so it's totally fine that I do this again. I hate the fact that they did not put the original costumes in the remakes of the Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 2 does it halfway, because I'd say Leon's like original costume is fine. I don't really like it because I don't think it looks as vibrant as his original 2 costume, but it's like, okay, that looks like his OG costume. Claire's OG costume is not her original costume. She doesn't have like the black t-shirt. She doesn't have like the black pants. I think they kept the blue jean thing because that was kind of like the retcon that they made once Darkside Chronicles came out. And I was like, okay. But still, if you're going like OG costume, it needs to be this specific thing. I think if you do the PlayStation costume, it is her actual original costume. I'd have to go back and look at that because I actually don't remember. So maybe even the PS1 costume isn't her like original look with the black t-shirt. It probably isn't. Now that I really think about it, they probably didn't do it for that either. But I know they didn't, where it's like, hey, here's the classic costume. It is not her classic costume, and I hate that. RE3 comes out. First off, RE3 in general. Don't have to talk about it. I literally have an entire episode about why that disappoints me. This is also in there. 2 costumes, huge disappointment and a shame. Both costumes are not the original costumes. I know they changed the skirt to a skirt. It could have stayed the same and they just put shorts underneath, so I don't know why they needed to make it an actual different design, but that's minor. That's like a small thing. Like the shirt still looks fine, or tube top, whatever it is, I wear t-shirts. I wear graphic tees and jackets, I'm be honest, I don't know. Tube top, whatever it's called, that was fine. She had the, I guess the sweater around her waist, it was fine. The skirt was like a change. Not that big of a deal, don't really hate it beyond belief. The RE1 costume is also changed, where like the shoulder pads are different, and I think there's a few other little things there, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Also hate the fact that despite them doing nothing for that game, Resistance has a billion costumes and weapons. Everything is on the RE engine. I still don't understand why to this day they thought, we don't need to update the game. Like they could have just taken all the, maybe not all the costumes, but some of those costumes, they could have just thrown into the actual main campaign. Jill can wear like every alternate costume. You can just slap a bunch of costumes on her in the online portion. She can use a bunch of different weapons, but they were like, we don't need to put those weapons in there. Why do that? Like you can go online and play as Jill, and she can use the single action army that you get in the RE2 game. She can use the Gatling gun, which is also in RE2, none of which they decided to put in the RE3 remake. Don't know why, but that's what they decided to do. So crazy times with that one. But RE3 remake in general. RE4 remake, same thing. And this mostly, actually, it only applies to Ada. The Separate Ways DLC came out and you could pick her original dress. It's literally a different type of dress. It is a like half red, half black dress. It is not her original dress. It's super weird that they even call it that when they could have just called it like the dress. And maybe that's what they do, but it's clearly meant to be her original dress because you unlock that when you unlock the other alternate costume for Luis, where it's his original costume. And his was slightly changed as well, but I was like, I was okay with that modern update for him because he was just wearing like a vest and a shirt. But I was like, I think the update for his was pretty decent. Like I think it was still a vest and a shirt, they just slightly changed it. But hers was like, it's literally a totally different dress. I mean, same style, I guess, but it's like, it's a half of it is black. That is, she had a full pink dress. It looks better. Like that's the crazy thing is like, I hate that they just called it like the original dress. Like technically I like it better because it's not just one plain color. And I think it stands out, like the butterflies even stand out a little bit more on the new one versus the original. But it was super weird that they did that. It was just like, why do you guys keep saying it's the original and then just changing it? Like, you know the old games, like just make it the exact costume. Or just don't call it that if you're gonna change it. That's the really weird thing about it. So, like I said, that's a minor thing when it comes to that. Survivor was a disappointment, experiencing that for the first time. I just have to throw that in there, but yeah. I think that's a good spot to end it, just Survivor. I like Survivor too. I've said that before. I'm not even gonna elaborate. You can find it in another episode. But I'm gonna end things there because I really talked about like the main things, which was definitely those plot points and not seeing characters. Those are the real things. Like the costume stuff, I do get annoyed with. Also in RE2 Remake, I do hate the fact that they gave Claire the jacket instead of just giving her the vest in general. So hopefully she doesn't have a jacket in the Code Veronica remake. I'd really hate that because I'm like, That would honestly kind of piss me off if they do another Claire remake and they're like, we'll just never remake her jacket or like even give her like her original outfits. That would really suck. Like, I know they updated Leon's costume, but it did basically look the same. They could have done like a slight update to Claire's outfit, or just given her like the Dark Side Chronicles thing, like give her the vest and then the blue jeans. But they're like, no, we're just gonna give her like a full-on different costume and pants. And I'm like, why? I don't know. So we'll see what happens when Code Veronica eventually gets announced. I really hope they put her in an effing vest, because I'm gonna be super annoyed if they give her another jacket again. But I would love to know your biggest disappointments in the Resident Evil franchise, whether it's the games, the movies. Admittedly, I think, the movies are the movies, and the Netflix show, like I said, meh. But I would love to know your biggest disappointments, whether they're like serious ones or just some of the little things that just really bug you. I would love to know all your disappointments with what is still my favorite franchise. Even your favorite things can have problems. I mean, heck, everyone hates on RE6, and people kind of crap a lot on RE0. I still like 0 a lot. That's just me personally. But I would love to know your thoughts, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.